welcome Shri Arvind Virmani ji to the Jaipur Dialogues. I now welcome our second speaker for the second session, Shri Sushant Sareen. He is a Strategic Affairs Analyst, Senior Fellow with the Vivekanand Foundation. In his own words, he is an obsessive Pakistan watcher, and in effect, he watches Afghanistan, terrorism, Islamism. He is a history buff who happened to study economics. Welcome, Shri Sushant Sareen, to the Jaipur Dialogues. I now introduce our moderator for session number 2, Shri Yusuf Unjawala. He is the editor of DefenseForumIndia.com, an online forum on defense and strategic affairs of India. He comments extensively on defense and geopolitics. A businessman by profession, the forum and his interests in defense and strategic affairs are his passion. He also writes for Swarajya magazine. Yusuf, the stage is yours now.
Sushanji, esteemed speakers who have spoken earlier, especially my ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank Sanjay for making an idea that started from a DM exchange on Twitter into a reality. And then pushing me into speaking here today. I'm going to speak about hard power, India's past, use of it, challenges, and the future. As Tufelji mentioned, the term soft power was coined by Joseph Nye, and then the opposite of that became hard power. But the use of hard power has been as long as ever since man made weapons and went to war, for whatever reasons, to exercise control, to dominate, and impose its will. So, what does hard power mean? It's the use of military and economic means to influence the behavior or interests of nations or political entities. Hard power means having modern military with sophisticated weapons, the economic might, which allows a country to coerce weaker powers into doing what it wants or even going to war using those means to impose its will. Now, having strong military and a good economy, a strong economy is one thing, but the ability to use it, especially way beyond your borders across the seas, is another, and that's called power projection. The US Department of Defense defines power projection as the ability of a nation to apply all or some of its elements of national power, political, economic, informational, or military to rapidly and effectively deploy and sustain forces in and from multiple locations, to respond to crises, to contribute to deterrence, and to enhance regional stability. The example of effective power projection is what the British did when they colonized the world, or what the US has done since World War II, where it has dominated other powers. So what are these instruments of modern power that allow you to project power? In today's term, it is a very strong navy, especially one which operates aircraft carriers, ballistic missile submarines, strategic bombers, intercontinental range ballistic missiles, strategic airlift capabilities, strategic sea lift capabilities, special forces, and having bases across the world. Now let's examine India's hard power and ability to project this power. We have always called ourselves as a soft power, or someone who punches way below its weight. But India, ever since independence, on various occasions, whenever its interests have demanded, has used hard power. And it started right after independence, where we integrated Junagadh and Hyderabad into the Indian Union. The liberation of Goa in 1961, when we threw the Portuguese out and liberated Goa. And then the crowning glory in 1971, when we used our hard power, broke up Pakistan into two and liberated Bangladesh. 1984 Operation Mendut, when we went to Siachen, occupied, and until today we use our hard power to sustain our presence over there in that unforgivable in Seychelles, where we prevented a coup against the pro-India president. Similarly, we did the same in Maldives in 1988 in Operation Cactus. And then in 1987, in a very strong show of force, we sent air supplies, relief supplies by air over to Jaffna and informed the Sri Lankans that we are going to do this. And we sent a fighter escort with it. And so if you guys do anything about this, we'll shoot you down. And that forced the Sri Lankans to talk to us, and then that resulted in the Sri Lanka Accord, and we sent our peacekeeping troops in. The other way that we have been projecting far in the last few years is anti-piracy operations, where we have operated ships in the Gulf of Aden. We have escorted over 3,000 merchant vessels, prevented over 40 piracy incidents, are patrolling the Malaccas, and the US invited us to do so that they could be relieved while the Operation Enduring Freedom was on. And then we have been deploying our naval assets from all the way from Mediterranean to the Pacific Ocean and exercising with the friendly powers. And this is a way of showing power that we have the ability to operate way off your own shores. More recently, we have used Special Forces operations, Myanmar and Pakistan, and today's Special Forces is recognized as a very potent form of power projection. In fact, the US has operated in over 135 countries in Special Forces operations, and these are all covert operations. Another way of power projection to show the ability to project power is using humanitarian disaster relief, which we have done a great deal in the last few years. It started really early, but in 2004, India was the first mover when the earthquake and the tsunami struck the Indian Ocean region. We mobilized over 20 warships and helped Sri Lanka, Maldives, Indonesia. And this is where we realized that we need more capabilities, and that's where we ordered from the US a landing platform called the USS Trenton, which we commissioned in our forces as INS Jalashwa. And this ship actually came in handy in 2011 in Libya, which helped us extract our nationals from the conflict zone. Coming to the extraction of our nationals, that also represents a way to project power where you are capable of coming to the aid of your citizens anywhere in the world. And we have done it repeatedly. We did it in 91, First Gulf War, and very recently we did this in Yemen. So, considering what I just said about what are the instruments of hard power, where does India stand? We have an aircraft carrier, which is the largest ever warship that we have ever operated. We have a nuclear-powered attack submarine, which we have leased from Russia, it's called JAIPUR. We have a ballistic missile submarine, the INS Arena. We have intercontinental range ballistic missile, the W-5. We have strategic airlift capabilities, and we are acquiring more of it. We have the IL-76, the C-70s, and the C-130s. And like I just mentioned, we have the LPD for strategic sea lift. And all three wings of our armed forces have strategic forces divisions. Looking at the future, we will acquire more aircraft carriers. One is already under construction. A third one, the Navy has said they want nuclear propulsion along with electromagnetic launch capability, which will allow them to launch heavy aircraft with a lot of payload and which can go longer distances. We are going to acquire more of those LPDs, etc., and then we are going to acquire about 6 ballistic missile submarines. We are going to acquire 6 nuclear attack submarines, and finally, we are even going to make bases. When the Prime Minister visited Mauritius and the Seychelles, he finalized a deal for a couple of islands which will develop into bases in the long term. You see that from all this, the most power projecting elements are there in the Navy, and this is in fact the British and the US dominated the British before during the colonial, and the US since the World War II have dominated using their navies. So, as far as the current and the future weapons procurement program is concerned, for our hard power projection, we do have it. Now, the question is, does India have the will and ability to project this hard power across the seas, just like we have done in our immediate neighborhood, as I just mentioned? And I will just draw your attention to a statement the Prime Minister of that time, Dr. Manmohan Singh, made in 2013, when he said, and I quote, "Notwithstanding the multiple challenges become a net provider of security and stability in the Indian Ocean region and beyond. And beyond, that's the word he used. And the latest naval doctrine, which was released in 2015, December of last year, states that, and it starts with the name itself, it says ensuring secure seas, Indian maritime security strategy. And this is a departure from the earlier one, which says freedom to use of seas. So from freedom of use of seas, it's gone to ensuring secure seas, which is an indication that India is looking to get a bigger role in securing the Indian Ocean region and beyond. So the areas of interest are also defined in this security doctrine or this maritime doctrine, which is divided into primary and secondary areas of interest. The primary areas obviously being our shorelines, our exclusive economic zones, the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, all the choke points which are in the Indian Ocean, which is the Hormuz, the Bab el-Mandab, the Malaccas, the Lombok, the Sunda Straits, and the southwestern Indian Ocean, where we have the Indian Ocean Islands and where we have tied up with negotiated deal with Mauritius and Seychelles for base. The secondary areas of interest are South Indian, East Indian Ocean, the Pacific, which leads to the Pacific, South and East China Sea, the Western Pacific, the Southern Indian Ocean, including Antarctica, the Mediterranean Sea, the West Coast, and any other areas where we have a diaspora. So this falls under secondary areas of interest. Now the nature of challenges, security challenges that India faces in these regions are both conventional and unconventional. Our threat from the western border is well known, doesn't need any documentation. We have a conventional superiority over Pakistan, and the Pakistanis are therefore relying on nuclear weapons to deter us from any conventional use of force for any of the terror attacks that it commits. So it is a challenge for us as to how we use hard power, in what way do we channelize it to tackle that. 2611 and the use of sea by terrorists was another escalation of how terrorism can be used against India. It was a new route which shook us up, and that's how a lot of the maritime doctrine also incorporates securing the seas and our borders as well. The rise of ISIS, which is in our extended neighborhood, the Gulf, and we are concentrating the Gulf region, the ISIS and their rise represents a challenge for us because over 7 million of our citizens live in that region, and they remit over $25 billion a year, and more importantly, 60% of our oil supplies come from there. So these non-state actors, the challenge of a non-state actor or a non-state actor promoted by a state actor, or as in the case of Pakistan, where the state actors themselves give an alibi of being non-state actors to promote terrorism, and then they attract people transcending boundaries, and they define nation states or states as they know, which is a challenge for us, especially in our extended neighborhood. If these states, state control falls, then we will have a security challenge as well as an economic problem. Use of hard power can fail if there is no wisdom in use. So that's what we have learned from the US action in Iraq and Afghanistan, where it uses hard power, but now we see that things are unraveled and it has failed. So the challenge is to use this hard power in a way which promotes your interest. The other challenge that we have, which is the conventional way, is the hard power of China. The Chinese have been projecting its force in our extended neighborhood, in the Indian Ocean, as well as the South and East China Sea. They have been sending naval assets, including anti-piracy operations, where they actually sent nuclear-powered submarines in our neighborhood, which has actually forced us to rethink and shaken us out of our slumber. The Chinese are making a port in Wada, which everyone is aware of. Now it's going to link it up to China, the seabed route, and it's passing through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which is a direct threat to us. The Wada port itself will be a threat to us once they establish a naval base over there. The Chinese state, the entire South China Sea has gone and is drawn a thing called 9-9, although there is a tribunal which has rejected its legality and any historic claims, but the Chinese government has rejected this. And obviously the Chinese are showing their hard power when they reject such thing, and they have gone on to make islands over there, which gives them a lot of control over the sea as well as the air. And India is now responding in various numerous bilateral meetings and in joint statements, especially with the US and Japan. We have seen that India has challenged this, saying that the rule of the international laws have to be obeyed, the UN CLOS has to be observed, which India has done when we settled our maritime border with Bangladesh. And we've increasingly talked about freedom of the use of the sea as well as the air. So a lot of the countries which are affected by these Chinese moves have looked up for foreign powers who protect them, and they've looked at India as a power which can do it, although we have been very reluctant so far. Now, military alliances and security agreements help help countries project powers, and India has been averse to any form of alliance with anyone, especially with the US, since a lot of talk has been ever since we signed the MOA. But we have had defense agreements with a lot of countries, especially in the Middle East, where we can birth our warships. And we have now, like I said earlier, with Mauritius and Seychelles, we have a basing agreement. We have a base there. And just like I mentioned, LEMOA has actually assisted with India get the knowledge required to project power. So you'll be able to fuel your warship and go all the way to, say, the Eastern Pacific. And it's good. And what we're also doing is that using our relations with Japan, converting that into a stronger defense ties. We have invited them to exercise Malabar, which we have been conducting with the US. We had shown sensibilities of not inviting them earlier, or did it once and then stopped it because we didn't want to offend China, but now that is a certainty. Japan will participate in all exercise Malabar. We have a dialogue with Australians, so there is some kind of understanding, short of alliance, that we will work with powers which are aligned to our interests, or our interests aligned with them, and we will come to some kind of an understanding in securing the very important waterways in the region. I will conclude by saying that India needs hard power and the ability to project power for its economy, to lift its people out of poverty. There is a large diaspora, Indian diaspora around the world, that needs to be protected at all times. And India also needs to be sensitive to the security needs of many of the nations around the region which look up to it and look at India as a benign power. We're not an expansionist power, contrary to what China is. So a lot of these countries look at India as a benign power and expect India to take the role of a security provider. And we have all the equipment required to protect these countries. It's a matter of will and how we go about it. I'll conclude with this, and I'll call upon Shani, you go next.